What you see on your screen at this time is a reminder that this information, please remember this Advisor Webcast is intended for informational purposes only. Any features or functionality described for Oracle's products remains at the sole discretion of Oracle. Now, let's get started with our presentation. Andy, if you're ready, I'll turn the webcast over to you, and you can begin.
Yes, I'm ready. Hi, hello, everybody. My name is Andreas Weber. I'm a technical support engineer and have been working with Siebel for about now 15 years and 10 years in the order management area. Today we want to talk about the Siebel eConfigurator and especially about how to set up product models with best practices. So you see that's part one. So this session will not cover all the topics. Therefore, we will also have a second part, maybe a third part if necessary, which will cover the rest of the topics. That's the agenda for today. First of all, a short introduction. Then I will talk about why we need to talk about product modeling at all. And then the rest will be about the modeling best practices. And here we will talk about some miscellaneous tips about the class design and about relationship design. As you can see, there are no tips and tricks for rules or attributes or scripting or user interface. This will be covered by a second or third part. Then we will end up with a summary with some hints to the future webcast and a question and answer session. Okay, let's start. Introduction. The primary purpose is here to show considerations regarding how to define a complex product in Siebel application. And the point is that the design of a model, a product model, is important in respect of achieving good performance, a good scalability, usability, and also have reasonable maintenance costs. What we will provide here are several easy modeling practices, and if you follow them, then you usually should end up in some well-written models. However, that's not an exhaustive list, and it's not a religion. I mean, some of these design considerations may or may not apply to your company business processes or to your requirements. That's something what you need to decide. But if you follow them, then in most cases you will not run into severe problems. So why do we talk about product modeling at all? From my point of view, good question. Actually, the point here is that with the current Siebel version, we have a lot of features, a lot of options, how we can set up products and product models. And actually, it's a bit similar to what you have in writing computer programs. You can have a well-written program or a well-designed model, then it usually produces good results and performs well. And you can have a poorly written program or a model, then it could still produce correct results, but it could behave inconsistently, it could perform poorly, it could create maintenance costs, and so on. So inaccurate model designs can have a lot of adverse effects, such incorrect or surprising results. They can cost a lot of memory or resources. You can have slow response times for user requests or for the loading time. It can finally end up in some decreased customer satisfaction. And that's why we recommend to think about your product models and have some design behind it. Okay, then I think we should simply start with modeling best practices. Today we will simply concentrate on miscellaneous tips on class and the relationship design. So regarding miscellaneous, we will talk about the product modeling standards, about the customer-centric model, modeling options, why using smaller objects, smaller models versus larger models, and then we will have a short notice about internal object names. First point here, define a product modeling standard document. Actually, this should be done at the beginning of each design phase, that you have a product modeling guideline standard document as early as possible. Example for the content could be, for instance, how should the user interface look like? Where shall the pictures be moved? Where should we have prices? What are the colors we want to use? Which kind of controls we want to use? Which common templates should only be used? Or, for instance, what is the maximum of attributes we want to have for each product? How shall the product hierarchy look like? Or how deep can the product hierarchy be? As well as naming conventions, for instance. The advantage is that you give the developer a very good framework which limits the possibilities and therefore reduces the product modeling design costs. Also, it aligns the user experience across the products. If you have a framework, then all of these products will have similar product models and therefore will look very similar to the user. So the look and feel will always be very similar. So if you train the user on one product, how to use it, and usually the user is very quickly familiar with a second, a third, or a fourth product model, because he sees the same situation, the same framework, the same things again and again. So this will end up in minimized needs for retraining. It will increase usability, efficiency, and the performance of implementing such a product model. And finally, it will simply reduce the time to introduce new products to the market. The disadvantage is, of course, that this is a living document, and of course, you should also maintain it and keep it up to date if you think it needs changes. Actually, it's very similar to writing code. If you write a C++ program, then usually you also have in almost every company where I was, there was a guideline which exactly told us how we have to write our C++ programs. So it gave us some limitations and the borders, but also a good framework. So you exactly knew where you can move, what you can use, and so on. And the same you should do for the product modeling. So that's, for instance, an example from a customer where he created such guidelines and where all the UI for all his products look very similar. You can see, for instance, on the left side, on the top left side, there's a picture. Beside you always have a description. On the right side, you always have the pricing. And below you had a message pane, and the rest was for customizing the product. Additionally, what you can see here as well is there are no scroll bars. So everything is quite easy. Everything can be visited within a view without any scrolling down, top, or right to left, and so on. And nice thing here on top, you can see where you are with this toolbar or sidebar on top. That does not need to be a standard template. I mean, you can also define this on a customized web template. I mean, the eConfigurator allows you to use web programming to make additional functionalities to the web template. But the point here is that you should have a guideline which exactly tells you how the user interface should look like. And this should then be consistent over maybe all products or a mix of product group. Next point is customer-centric model. I mean, that's actually nothing which is really only related to product modeling. It's actually related to almost every development you do, that you should always have your customer in mind. And for this, if you start to design a model, you can simply ask yourself two questions. Does this product or attribute mean anything to the customer? So if it does not have any meaning, then is it possible to remove it? Or remove it, if you can't remove it from the product model, then maybe you can remove it from the UI. Make the whole stuff easier. And the second question you should always ask yourself is, if you were to order the product yourself for the first time, would you understand all the details? If you can answer this question with yes, then you will have a very good self-explaining product model and design. Usually the advantage is that the product models will be simpler, they can faster configure, and they have an improved usability. So always keep this in mind. I mean, that's not specific for product modeling, but it's very often forgotten. Typical example for such a model, which is very self-explaining, and it's a screenshot. You have some organization in the vertical and some organization in the horizontal. The groups are designed in a way that all the subcomponents are at one specific place, and actually nobody will probably need any explanation or description how to use this model, how to design something, and how to work. It's very easy and easy to understand. Okay, next point is very important in my eyes. If you work with product models and they're becoming larger and larger, deeper and more complex, then it might be time to think about some additional modeling techniques, some alternatives. And these alternatives are product promotion functionality, compound product functionality, fixed bundles, and simple products with and without attributes, and favorites. So whenever, for instance, let's talk about promotions. Promotions are actually nothing else than very flexible bundles which allow you to combine different products. You can add some additional rules like cardinality rules for the min and max cardinality. You can exclude values for the attributes and for products and for child products and so on. That gives you some quite good features for flexible bundles, and it's very easy to maintain. Another point would be compound products. Compound products were created for network products where you have a framework. Within this framework you have nodes and connections and an API to validate all this stuff. But in some cases also it's a very specific product. Some cases could happen that your product looks very similar to such a compound product. So why not think about using or looking into this functionality and see whether you can use it instead of a complex eConfigurator model. Another point are fixed bundles. Bundles were used before we had product promotion. And you can see bundles as a kind of a snapshot of a customizable product with some default settings for the attributes, for the structure. And that would be, for instance, a very good alternative if you have a customer, let's say, who has a customized product with a lot of features or a lot of possibilities to configure it. But in most cases, let's say 90–95%, they will only use 5 specific configurations. So why do you want to let each customer run through all these configurations? Simply create, for instance, 5 fixed bundles with exactly these options, and let the user use this and cover 90–95% of all cases. And the rest, let's say the rest of 5%, they of course need to go to the eConfigurator. Then simple products. Sometimes maybe you can avoid using the eConfigurator by using a simple product with or without attributes. I mean, you can still connect simple products with attributes, and you are able then to change these attributes in the order and code view because they are editable as long as the structure type of this product is simple. And last but not least, we have favorites. And favorites is something which I rarely see, which is really rarely used by customers. It's actually nothing else like a template. So you can create a kind of a quote item template or an order line item template, where you simply add all the products, customizable products with different options and simple product bundles or whatever under one favorite, and the customer can simply go through the order catalog view, and within the catalog view we have a favorites tab, and if he clicks on it, he will see all the favorites defined, and then he can simply take one of his favorites and move it completely to the order, so all the line items are created at once. It's actually like a template usage. All these options shall do one thing. They shall simply give you alternatives to avoid eConfigurator usage, or split up your product in some smaller pieces you can possibly cover with those options, and make everything a bit more easier to use. Actually, if you do that, you will usually see a performance improvement, you will see usability improvements, and you will see simpler product models. So, all in all, whenever you can avoid the eConfigurator, why should you not think about this? That's an example. Here you can see a screenshot from the 8.1.15 environment, where you can see how favorites can be created. You have to navigate to the administration product screen and then to the favorites view. And then below you will see, on top you will see a tablet with all the favorites, the header. And below you can see, under each favorite you can see the pre-configured line items. The customer can simply then move into the quote or order. In the application itself, you do not need to move the whole favorite into a quote. You can also simply select pieces of that, only parts. You can even reconfigure some of these. For instance, the frame relay here is a customizable product, but it in many cases gives the customer a very easy possibility to have a pre-configured quote or order line item and simply move it over, and then you can go on. Yeah, regarding the product types, I mentioned before, between none, bundle, and customize, I would like to add something. The screenshot at the bottom is from the product definition, administration product definition. You can see there are 4 different types of products. So the first one is a bundle with the structure type bundle. Then we have a customizable product with the structure type customizable. And then we have a simple product with nothing, that's the structure type none, and a simple product where attributes are assigned to setting the class. It also has the structure type none. And what I wanted to show is, based on these different types of products, what happens with the attributes and quotes and order views, and what happens with the customized button. For simple with classes and bundle, but always structure type bundle or none, the customized button will always be disabled. It will only be enabled when the structure type is customizable. And attributes are usually only read-only, besides if you have a simple product with a class edit. Then they are editable under the quotes and order view, which is not possible for bundles or customizable products. For customizable products, you always have to go for the eConfigurator in order to make any changes. For bundles, you cannot make changes because it's fixed. Okay, then let's go to a point which we see in reality again and again. That's a question whether we should use several smaller models versus one large. Actually, there are no limits how huge your product can be. It's actually only a question of the memory you have. So a lot of customers have very large, huge product definitions or product models. The problem with huge models is they need longer to load, they have longer click response times, they have a lot of additional constraint tools, they need a mess of resources, and they are very difficult to maintain, especially if you have problems with rules or scripts and so on. It's quite difficult to maintain a huge product. While the advantage with smaller products is that you have massive performance improvements. They load much quicker. Click response times are usually no problem, and the number of constraints, rules, or scripts are slow, are small. It simply needs less resources. So the question is, what should you do? And the answer from a tech support recommendation, from a tech support point of view, the recommendation is, whenever it's possible, divide a large model into several smaller models. If there are no intermodal dependencies, which would make it difficult, but if there are no intermodal dependencies, then try to divide it up into several smaller models and use them this way. I know that some administrators prefer administering a huge model rather than several small ones, and of course it needs a bit more demand for caching all these products. But usually, if you look at the maintenance costs and what you need to do if you find any problem, then you will run with smaller models much better than with one huge product model. Okay, last point for the machine learning part is don't change the internal object names. That's something which comes from our experience with service requests. If you make a decision for an internal name, for instance, based on naming conventions in your guidelines, then you should keep this name for the whole life cycle of the product, of the class, or of the attribute. Don't change it because it can sometimes become a problem for validating new product models or existing product models if you make such changes. So what we usually recommend is make your changes on the display name, but don't change the internal name. How to change the display name? That's a screenshot how you can change the display name. You go to the administration product definition, and then there's a tab with the name display name, and there you can add additional display names for different languages. For attributes, it's a bit different. You have to go to the tab Attributes, then select the attribute you want to change, right-click on this attribute, and you will get a pop-up menu, and it offers a translations option. Click on this, and you can add separate display names. This can be done on class or on product level. Okay, next topic is class design tips. There are not many design tips. So in this case, we have only 3. That's about the class layers, about the level, and the use of class products. So classes actually was thought to be a container for attributes, and then it will be attached to a product, and the product gets all these attributes attached. This is still the main task of a class. But classes can also be used to group products. And one thing we saw is that some customers simply use class layers to group products where the class doesn't have any real value, only besides grouping. And this will simply slow down the engine without adding additional benefit. So we recommend don't do that. Don't create extra layers if they are not really necessary and if they don't have any functionality. This will improve the performance, usability, and the maintainability. There's one exception, because I mentioned this here below. Extra layer could make sense for combining unrelated products in one class used for a relationship. I will explain this later when we talk about relationships. Next tip regarding classes is you should not go deeper than 3 levels in a class hierarchy. The screenshot here, for instance, shows an example where we have a product class with the name access card and a parent product class equipment. Equipment itself determined product class cable and broadband, and cable and broadband then is the real boot class. So that's actually the maximum we would recommend. Don't go deeper than 3 levels. The experience from our daily work shows that more than 3 levels can really stress the system. It increases the number of products, rules, and attributes, and you will definitely get more different rule types. So it will usually end up in a worse performance and maintainability. So the clear recommendation here is use a flatter or the flattest structure you can. Whenever possible, simply avoid using parent product classes at all. Simply use a flat structure. The last point regarding classes is the usage of class products. As I mentioned before, classes were, first of all, they were a container for attributes. But today you can also use a class as a class product, as a kind of a template for a product design, which means that you can simply add almost everything to a class. You can add rules, you can add scripts, you can add structure, besides the possibility of attributes, of course. And if you simply attach this class to a product, everything will be inherited to the product. So this has the advantage sometimes that you can have some consistency among different individual products. And once a generic model has been validated, you can add the class product to each individual key, and it already works fine. It simply is an improvement in maintenance, and it will probably reduce the administration overhead for the product modeler. So simply check your product models. Are there a lot of things which are identical for each of these product models? And if yes, would it make sense to move those things into a specific class product and use this one and remove all the specific stuff from the product? I think yes. So that's a typical example how a class design can look like. On the left side, you see the tree of all the possibilities, and this is a typical class product where we have 2 attributes set, color and size. We have a relationship defined, which will then used for each of which will then be visible for all the products which uses the class. We have 1 constraint and 1 script, and everything will be moved to the product when the product is connected with the class. There's one thing I would like to mention is on the product area, if you go to product definitions and have a product class product attached, then you will only see the attributes on the product definition. You won't see the script, you won't see the constraints, and you won't see the relationships. If you want to make changes to constraints, relationships, then you always have to go back to the class product and do it there. That's currently not a nice thing, but that's how it works at the moment. Okay, next point is relationships and design tips for relationships. I already added here a few keywords and class name, relationships, and their domain side. What about if you have the same product on more than 1 relationship, domain type product, and the relationship with and without rule references. So let's go for this point. First one is a very important one. Don't leave class names empty. What does it mean? For relationships, we have 3 different domain types. You can have the domain type product, and you have only a product on this relationship, nothing else, 1 product. If you look at the screenshot, then you would have an entry on the product column in the middle. If you have the class, domain type class, or the text class, then you have to define a relationship domain. That's what you can see in the screenshot below. That's a relationship domain. All the products you can select for this relationship. If you leave the product class empty, which is allowed, then you can simply attach any product you like. So it would end up in a kind of a relationship with for products for anything. And this is what we do strongly recommend not to do. It has a very severe impact on performance and is one of the worst performance killer you can have in the product model. So whenever it's possible, add a product class here. If it's not possible because you really want to connect completely different products with each other, then you can simply take the trick I showed you under the class where we talked about avoiding unnecessary class layers. You simply create a class as a root class where you simply combine those unrelated products, and then you simply use this class in order to show the relationship domain. The problem is that if you don't have a class name entered, then it's really it needs a lot of performance for the eConfigurator engine to set up the product in its solution suite. So whenever possible, avoid it. That's really a performance killer. Next performance killer is that you have a class relationship with large available domains but small defined domains. They are very poor performing relationships. Example is, for instance, you have a class which is attached to 50 products. So this class has 50 products as its domain, but you only use 3 products of the 50 products in the relationship within the eConfigurator and define them. So in this case, the eConfigurator engine also has problems to work through this very efficiently, and it will cost a lot of performance. And therefore, the tip and the recommendation is here that you should always model for a relationship domain that is very close to the size of the class domain. So whenever possible, have the relationship domain the same as the class domain. So this means that if you, in this case, would mean simply add the 50 products. Of course, it doesn't make sense maybe, but then think about your class design. Maybe you can define a class which only has really these 3 products and then use it as the class for this relationship. Always a point to think about if you design your classes. Okay, then we have some additional relationship designs for classes which are not as important as the first 2 ones. The first one is keep domain size small. This means that within a relationship with class or dynamic class type, whenever possible, don't add too many products. But why is this important? The eConfigurator internally works with a kind of a solution tree. So it tries to set up a solution tree in order to check all the possibilities against the rules. And the more the higher the number of products in a domain you have, the bigger is the size of this tree, which means that it simply needs more time to set up this tree and to find a solution. So what you can do to reduce the number of products in a domain simply. The best is, of course, if you have a domain with the type product. It's the easiest one, it's the most performant one, and it only offers 1 product to select. So whenever possible, simply use it. First point is, do not add same product to more than 1 relationship. This has to do with auto-match. Auto-match is a functionality which will try to match an instance, a line item instance, for instance, against the newest product model. So let's say you have changed your product model, you have added additional relationships or removed relationships and so on. then Automatch will try to transform the current product instance you have on a quote to transform it into this newest product model. And if you have products in more than one relationship, then it can happen that Automatch cannot decide where the product should go and that it is moved to the wrong relationship. So this means that it cannot guarantee a correct conflict resolution. So therefore, the recommendation is only add the product to one relationship and not more. And the last one is a tip regarding maintenance and for test purposes. Whenever possible, split your relationship and have a relationship where you have products with no rules and a relationship where you have rules. The advantage here is that when you have no rules on a relationship, then the eConfigurator engine can simply ignore those relationships for the solution of the selection in its solution tree. And for test purposes, it's much easier because you can simply ignore those relationships. Don't need to take care of them. So that's more something for if you want to be effective in testing, and you can do this, then split the relationships this way. Okay, that's a screenshot of a very simple product modeling. We have a lot of attributes, 5 relationships, but these relationships, for instance, have all the domain type products, and only have one product. That's usually something which is not always possible, but whenever you can do it, then model it this way. Okay, last but not least, a summary of the session for the day. Some miscellaneous tips, like define a product model in standards document. Always think about the customer-centric model. Think about the customer who has to work with the product. Consider all alternative options like promotions, simple product bundles, and so on. Try to make more smaller models than one large. Do not change into an object name. For class design, this is quite easy. Don't create unnecessary class layers. Don't go deeper than 3 levels. And consider the use of class products. For relationship design tips, we have 2 things. You should always stay away. Don't use empty class names. And avoid class relationships with large available but small defined names. The other tips are keep your domains always small if possible. Don't add the same product to more than one relationship. Whenever possible, define domains with the type product. And if possible, simply divide up your relationships in relationships with and without rule references. Yeah, one point for future webcasts. The next webcast will be around mid of April, and it has the name Part 2. And we'll talk about UI definitions, about rules, best practices with attributes, and some miscellaneous points. Thank you for attending this webcast. Now we will start the question and answer session.
Thank you, Andy. We hope everyone found the presentation valuable today. We'll open our Q&A in just a moment, so please use the chat feature or the phone lines at this time to let us know you have a question. Jennifer, could I ask you to give instructions once again for those on the phone lines?
At this time, to ask a question, press star 1.
Okay, and we'll pause for just a moment to compile a roster of questions. Andy has mentioned that we are going to be doing a part 2, and I do have the information on that. It will be presented on April 17th at 4 p.m. CET time, which is, let me just double check this, 10 a.m. Eastern time here in the States. So 10 a.m. Eastern time or 4 p.m. European time on April 17th. And where you can register for that is if you go out to My Oracle Support document number 740966.1. You'll see it listed there under Siebel, and you can click on the abstract and then click on the registration link, and you'll be all set for April 17th, 2012. Also, if you're out in My Oracle support, you might want to take a look at our archived advisor webcasts. They're located on doc number 740964.1. Again, that's 740964.1. And in approximately 48 hours, I will have the download and streaming link to this presentation along with the PDF. So go out there and you can download the recording and download the PDF and have it for future reference. So I just wanted to remind everyone of those things. Jennifer, we'll start with you. Do you have any questions from your audience?
No questions.
Okay. Andy, we do have one here on the chat feature. In 7.5, there was a checkbox as class product. In 8.1, how do we identify class products?
Class products cannot be identified anymore this way. A class product is simply something which has more than attributes. I mean, the term class product is nothing which is really an official term. I would say every class is a class product, but if you see it in relationship to this presentation, I would say a class product is something which has structure defined, maybe additional rules and scripts which can then be used by each product assigned to this class. So, but there is no special setting where you can say, okay, that's a class product.
Okay. As I said earlier, I always try to give you enough time to find the features that we talked about. I know a lot of time you'll have a group of your associates in the same room, and you'll need to figure out what question is the most appropriate to ask. Okay, I have someone that sent a chat in that says, I also have a question. You'll need to type that question in on the chat feature, or if you have dialed in, you'll need to queue up to ask the question. Jennifer, once again, how do they queue up on the phone lines?
*1.
Okay, by pressing *1. Okay, here's another one. Can we use EIM to load customer products?
The question is, that's a question which is raised again and again. And the answer is you can use EIM for simple products, but you can't use it for customizable products. The problem is that EIM doesn't have any interface tables for the versioned record and data model. So it's not supported to use EIM for importing customizable products. Even for simple products, you can import them, but you have to create the version record with a special function which is part of the ISO's offering import-export business service.
Okay.
For customizable products, we only have the option to use the ISO's offering business service for importing product definitions. And there is a new business service which is offered by the AIA team. It has the name SWE Product Import, which goes through the EIA mechanism. And of course, you can simply use the official interfaces like ADM and the Workspace.
Okay. If we upgrade from 7.5 to 8.1, what will happen to our class products?
Interesting question. I need to check this.
Okay, so I will be sending Andy your email address, and he'll get back to you on a one-off on this.
Yep.
On slide 18, what do you define as a huge product model, number of products, number of rules governing the product model?
A huge product model is actually the number, I would say the number of objects you have in this product. This can be, of course, a number of rules. Let's say you have, and usually you wouldn't have a lot of rules if you don't have a lot of objects in this product. So usually, for instance, I give you an example. We have customers who have 1,000 objects in a product. So this means 1,000 child and grandchild objects, attributes, and so on. And then, of course, usually you will also see, based on the number of objects, an increasing number of rules. But I can't tell you that 100 rules are exactly the limit where you can say that's a huge object. Usually what you can see is if your loading time increases and looks a bit bad, then you're probably on the way to have a huge product model. And then you should think about whether you can split it up or maybe try to find some alternatives, for instance, parts that you can simply take part of it and create a product promotion or whatever. Or simply check out whether you really follow all the best practices in order to get better performance again. But there is no real limit where I say, okay, that's a huge and that's a small model. Even a huge model can make sense. If it's well designed, then a huge model doesn't mean that it's always bad. It simply is a matter of how it is designed.
Okay. We still have time for additional questions, so if you'd like to ask a question, you can always queue up on the phone lines or you can enter it in the chat feature. Okay, we do have another question. Slide 29. It is mentioned same product to more than one relationship. Do you mean under the same customizable product?
Under the same customizable product, yes. Sorry for the misunderstanding.
If we change the display name of an attribute, what things need to be done? Most of the time, we don't see the new name reflected.
If you change the display name of an attribute, then usually what you need to do is you have to refresh the cache of the object where you made this change. The change can be done on a class or on a product, depending on where you want to make the display name different. And what you need to do is you have to click on the refresh cache, so that and you have to release a new product version. Otherwise, it's not visible.
Okay. And I've been asked to repeat where the archived Advisor webcasts are located. If you go to My Oracle Support, and you do a search for doc number 740964.1, you will see all the Advisor webcasts that have been presented in 2012. We also go as far back as 2009, but for this webcast, you would look at the current page, which is 2012, and go down to Siebel, and at that point, you'll see this presentation, download and streaming link along with the PDF. And just remember, I will not have it out there for about 48 hours. It takes usually 24 hours for it to populate and to get the link, and then I post it out there. So today is Tuesday. I would look at Thursday to make sure that you can find it, and it has been posted. So again, that's document number 740964.1. So Jennifer, any questions from your audience?
No question.
Okay, and I'm not seeing any additional questions on the chat feature, so I want to thank Andy and thank everyone for joining today's Oracle Advisor webcast. We hope you find this webcast valuable, and we look forward to you joining us again. Please enjoy the remainder of your day. Thank you very much.